Okay, let's talk about the 1990s. You're probably thinking grunge, dial-up internet, maybe some questionable fashion choices, but on Wall Street, it was all-out war. A war against a crime that could make you a millionaire overnight or bring down the biggest titans in finance, insider trading. So let's jump in, because this is the decade that totally changed the game for financial heists. But before we can even get into the 90s, you gotta ask the question that was haunting Wall Street at the end of the 80s. The entire financial world was basically run by one guy. A man so powerful they didn't just call him a boss, they called him a king. And the government, they wanted his head. And in 1990, Wall Street got its answer. The king's name was Michael Milken, the junk bond king. This guy didn't just play the game, he pretty much invented the modern high-yield bond market. So when he pleaded guilty, it wasn't just a headline, it was an earthquake. And it was the starting pistol for a brand new fight. Which brings us right here. See, Milken's downfall wasn't just the final chapter of the crazy 80s scandals, it was the spark that lit the fuse for the entire decade to come. Just look at this number, $600 million. I mean, come on, that's not a fine, right? That's a statement. That's the government planting a flag right in the middle of Wall Street and yelling, "The party's over." The old way of doing things was officially done. And it wasn't just Milken who paid the price. The fallout from this was so huge, it took down his entire firm, Drexel Burnham Lambert. Now think about this. This was a Wall Street giant, the undisputed king of the junk bond market, and it just evaporated. Poof, gone. It was the first time a major investment bank had failed since the Great Depression. The message couldn't have been clearer. Nobody is too big to fail. So, with the biggest fish from the 80s now in the can, Congress figured it was time to change the rules of the fight. They decided to give the regulators, the cops on the beat, a whole new set of weapons for the 90s. And boy, did they get serious. Just look at the difference here. Before, you get caught, maybe 5 years in prison, $100,000 fine. For some of these guys, that's a rounding error. But after this new law, 10 years, $1 million fine. Suddenly, getting caught wasn't just a cost of doing business, it could literally ruin your life. But here's where it gets really clever. This wasn't just about bigger punishments. No, it was about creating a whole new battlefield. They made it so firms were now responsible if their traders went rogue. They started paying bounties for whistleblowers, basically turning your coworkers into potential informants. And they forced companies to build these so-called Chinese walls to stop information from leaking. They were attacking the problem from literally every single angle. So the stage is set, right? The old king is gone. The cops have a bunch of brand new, shiny weapons. It was time to hit the streets and see who they could catch. And with all this new firepower, the SEC started casting a much, much wider net. And the characters they started pulling in, well, let's just say it wasn't just the Wall Street hotshots anymore. This is where the story gets really weird. I mean, seriously, you cannot make this up. Get this. A psychiatrist. His patient is the wife of a major CEO, and she's spilling all these corporate secrets during their sessions. So what does the shrink do? He starts trading on it. And then he even tips off his broker. It just goes to show the SEC was now looking for secrets absolutely everywhere, even on the therapist's couch. Then you have this guy, the founder of Carl's Jr. He finds out his company is about to post some really terrible numbers. So what's his next move? He gets on the phone with 6 of his family members and tells them, sell now. I mean, it is about as textbook as insider trading gets. But this next one, this is my favorite. It reads like something out of a movie. It all starts with one secretary at IBM. She learns about a secret plan to take over Lotus Development. So she tells her husband. Okay, seems innocent enough. But then he tells a couple of friends. And from there, the tip just explodes. It went viral before going viral was even a thing. We're talking 6 hours, 6 layers of people. It gets to pizzeria owners, repairmen, just regular folks. And this little network of whispers nets them over $1 million. Incredible. So these were all huge wins, but there was still this massive, gaping loophole in the law. It all had to do with outsiders, and fixing it led to the biggest legal showdown of the entire decade. Okay, so here's the deal. Under the old rule, you could only be guilty of insider trading if you were a true insider, an employee, a director, someone who owed a duty to the company's shareholders. So what if you were, say, a lawyer for a company that was planning a takeover?
you're not an insider at the company being bought, right? So you could trade on that secret, and technically, it was legal. It was a huge blind spot.
And this is the guy who blew it all up, James O'Hagan. He was a partner at a law firm. His firm's client was planning a secret takeover of Pillsbury. Now, O'Hagan wasn't a Pillsbury insider, not even close, but he knew the plan. And he used that stolen information to make a cool $4.3 million. He was the perfect test case. If this guy walked, the whole system was broken.
But he didn't walk. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And then, in 1997, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg dropped this bombshell. She basically said, look, it's simple. If you steal confidential information to trade stocks, you're committing fraud. It doesn't matter who you work for. It matters that you stole the info from someone you owed a duty to. Stealing is stealing.
And boom, that was it. The misappropriation theory became the law of the land. The game was officially changed forever. It wasn't about your job title anymore. It was about whether you were a thief. That giant loophole slammed shut for good.
So, what was the fallout from all of this? The fall of a king, a whole new legal playbook, and the closing of the biggest loophole in the system. It had a massive, lasting impact on how Wall Street still works today.
Well, for starters, it created this entire industry we now just call compliance. All of a sudden, Wall Street firms were terrified. They were on the hook for what their employees did, so they had no choice but to build their own internal police forces, setting up those Chinese walls, creating watch lists to spy on their own traders, and hiring armies of compliance officers. Basically, paranoia became corporate policy.
But here's the crazy part. Even with all these new powers, they didn't catch everyone. And this story is just, wow. In 1992, the SEC busted a fund for illegally funneling money to some mysterious manager who was getting these ridiculously steady returns. They shut down the fund, they fined the operators, but they never bothered to investigate the manager himself. Any guess who that manager was? Yep, Bernard Madoff. They were right there, and they missed the biggest financial fraud in history.
Even so, you can't overstate how important this 90s framework became. It laid all the legal groundwork for the big prosecutions of the 2000s. You know, when they finally went after people like Martha Stewart? Her case, a classic tipping case, was built on the exact same legal ideas that were forged in the fires of this very decade.
So yeah, the 90s was the decade that drew the battle lines for the modern war on insider trading. But here's the thing about Wall Street. It's a constant cat and mouse game. The rules change, the technology gets crazier, and the heists just get more sophisticated. Which really makes you wonder, what's the next big one going to look like?